Let's be honest, we all know we need to be talking about AI ethics. But man, those conversations can get really complicated really fast. So today, we're going to look at a pretty cool framework that's designed to turn those tricky discussions into something genuinely productive.
But first, why is this so hard? I mean, why do these conversations always seem to hit a wall? Well, they often get tangled up in super technical jargon or, abstract fears about the future, or just a bunch of competing opinions. It's just way too easy for the whole thing to fizzle out before you get anywhere meaningful.
All right, so let's get into the solution, and it's a really interesting one. It's an approach that uses, of all things, a game to give these conversations some structure. The whole idea is to create this safe, focused space where people can actually explore different perspectives and real-world situations in a way that's, actually constructive.
And this quote right here, it just perfectly captures the mission. This Let's Talk AI ethics game, it's not about winning an argument or proving you're right. It's all about fostering a real dialogue. The whole thing is built to get people talking openly and really thinking about how we can bring AI into our lives and our workplaces responsibly.
So how does it actually work? Well, the game structure is really the secret sauce here. It's basically a series of simple, timed steps that guide everyone through a pretty thorny topic. So let's do a quick run-through of the rules of engagement.
So here's the flow. First, you get a role to play and a specific real-life scenario. Then you've got a few minutes to just start talking. But here's the really clever part. You get hit with a twist, a new piece of information that kind of messes with your assumptions and forces you to rethink things. It's a great way to break people out of their fixed mindsets. That leads to a much deeper conversation, and then finally, a group debrief where you recommend what to do next. It's a really dynamic process that keeps things moving. And get this, an entire round for one whole scenario is just 16 minutes long. That tight time limit is absolutely crucial. It forces everybody to get to the point, to stay on topic, and it keeps the energy up. It really prevents the whole conversation from getting bogged down or going off on some wild tangent.
Of course, a great structure is only as good as the questions it helps you tackle, right? So now let's dive into some of the core ethical ideas this game is designed to bring to the surface. These are exactly the kind of tough topics that this framework is built to handle.
First up, a term you've probably heard a lot lately, AI hallucination. This is basically when an AI spits out an answer that sounds totally believable, maybe even confident, but it's just wrong. It's either factually incorrect or completely made up. Really understanding this concept is so fundamental to getting a handle on the risks of these tools.
You can almost think of it as a weird form of AI imagination. The system is just recognizing patterns from its training data, and sometimes it just puts the pattern together incorrectly. And that brings us to the absolute critical point here. You can never just take AI-generated content at face value. It always needs a human to double-check it and make sure it's accurate.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? How do you verify what an AI tells you? Well, there are a few solid techniques. First is something called lateral reading, which is just a fancy way of saying open up some new tabs and compare what the AI said with what other credible sources are saying. You can also use other tools, like Perplexity or academic search engines, to cross-check the facts. The main goal is to mix that broad research with some deep dives into sources you know you can trust.
The game also brings up these huge society-level issues. I mean, you've got the massive debate around copyright, like the whole New York Times versus OpenAI lawsuit. You've got the growing danger of information inequality, where the very best AI tools are stuck behind expensive paywalls. And of course, there's the critical issue of bias, where AIs can end up just amplifying the biases that already exist in our world because that's the data they were trained on.
Now, on a more practical note, these conversations also highlight a key truth. The quality of what you get out of an AI is totally dependent on the quality of what you put in. So think of this as a recipe for a good prompt. First, give the AI a role, like act as a marketing expert. Then, clearly define the task you want it to do. Be specific about the output format you want. And if you can, tell it what sources to use or maybe even what sources to avoid. Better prompts, I'm telling you, lead to way better results.
So, after all the role-playing and the twists and the talks about hallucinations and copyright, what's the end game here? What is this all really building towards?
And here it is. This is the whole point. The purpose of this game, of this framework, and really of this entire discussion is to get us ready for responsible AI adoption. It's not about being for AI or against AI. It's about building a common ground, a shared understanding,
through open and informed conversation so that we can navigate this new world wisely. Ultimately, a framework like this is just a tool. It gives us a better way to have these conversations. So the only real question left is, how are you going to use it to start the conversation in your team, your classroom, or your community?